the beginning, before cities, before the first brick was pressed and burned, before any scribe wet his thumb to smooth the surface of a waiting tablet, the gods divided the world among themselves and found it wanting. This is what the old songs say. This is what the priests remember when the lamps burn low and the temple cats move silently through the inner courts and the river breathes outside the mud brick walls like something old and unsatisfied. Anu held the sky. He was remote and enormous, the father of fathers, the roof of everything, so high above men that his commands arrived as weather, as season, as the tilt of stars across the dark. Men did not pray to Anu the way they prayed to others. They acknowledged him the way they acknowledged the horizon, necessary, unapproachable, present in all directions. Enlil held the air between sky and earth. He held the wind, the breath, the storm. He held kingship. He held the tablet of destinies against his chest when he wished things to be permanent, and men felt the weight of his decisions in their bones before their minds understood what had been decreed. Enlil was the god of order that crushes. He was the flood that had already been decided before the first cloud gathered. He was not cruel, exactly. He was vast. Vastness has no room for cruelty or kindness. It simply is. Enki held the sweet water beneath the earth, the Apsu, that dark, glittering engine of creativity from which all living things draw what they need to persist. Enki was clever. He was the trickster among the great gods, but a trickster who loved what he made. When Enlil decided to send the flood and erase the noisy creatures who had been disturbing the gods' sleep with their prayers and their multiplying and their ceaseless need, it was Enki who warned Utnapishtim. It was Enki who whispered to the wall of a reed house, technically keeping his oath not to speak directly to a man, finding the loophole in divine law, because the law said nothing about walls. Enki understood that the most important things are often done sideways. Inanna held love and war, the two hungers that never sleep. She was the morning star. She was the evening star. She was the same star appearing in different skies, and men never tired of being surprised by her. She wore the city of Uruk like a crown. She had taken the mare from Enki, the sacred powers and properties of civilization, lordship, priesthood, truth, descent into the underworld, ascent from it, the sword, the quiver, the black garment of mourning, the colorful garment of joy, scribal art, the building of cities. She had taken all these in a boat loaded with treasures, while Enki was still drunk from the feast he had held in her honor, and she had carried them to Uruk before he sobered enough to send his demons after her. This is what the songs say. The May arrived in Uruk before the city fully knew what to do with them. That is always how great gifts work. They arrive before the vessel is ready. The vessel must grow to hold them or shatter trying. Before cities, there was Ki. Ki was the earth. She lay under everything. She was patient in the way that things which cannot move learn to be patient. She received the dead. She held the roots of cedar and palm and reed. She was the body on which men built their first hesitant structures, and she did not object, because the earth does not object to what stands upon it. She records, in her layers of silt and ash and bone, what men do. She is the oldest tablet. The gods made man from clay. This is not metaphor. This is not poetry reaching for an image. This is the literal account the priests preserved, because it was true in the way that myths are true, truer than fact, because facts pass and myths remain. The gods mixed the blood of a slaughtered god with the clay of the earth and breathed into it what gods breathe into things when they want those things to move. The result was man. Noisy, hungry, restless, inventive, mortal, praying constantly. The gods had made man to labor so that gods would not have to. Before signs, memory lived entirely inside men. Inside men, memory was mortal. It died with the body that held it. A king who wished his commands to travel farther than his voice had only one instrument: the messenger. The messenger was trained from childhood. He learned the royal formulas, the protocols, the exact wording of diplomatic exchanges, the names of distant lords, the quantities of tribute owed, the genealogies that justified claims, the hymns that opened negotiations, the insults that closed them. A great king's messenger was a living archive. He stood at the border between what was known and what was not. He crossed mountains and rivers carrying the invisible weight of a kingdom behind his eyes. But the messenger was also flesh. He grew tired. He grew hungry. He could be killed on the road, and with him died whatever he carried. The message was made of flesh. Flesh rots. In the highland kingdom of Aratta, the problem was felt differently than on the plain. Aratta sat among mountains that imposed their own grammar on human exchange. Passes closed in winter. Roads were difficult and sometimes impossible. The highland air was thin and cold and clarifying in the way that hardship clarifies. It stripped men down to what they essentially were. Enmerkar was the son of Utu, the sun god, or so the hymns proclaimed. Every great king was the son of some god. This was not vanity exactly. It was cosmology. Inanna had chosen him, or he had chosen her. The relationship between a city and its goddess was not simple, not merely vertical, not merely the great above and the small below. It was reciprocal. The king was Inanna's shepherd and her bridegroom in the sacred rites. The great temple complex of Inanna, the house of heaven, rose at the center of Uruk in tiers of whitewashed mud brick that caught the morning light and threw it back at the sky. The priests maintained it. The temple owned land, herds, labor pools, boats, fishing rights, grain stores large enough to feed the city for 3 years of bad harvest. She was not gentle. She was the goddess who descended to the underworld and faced her dark sister Ereshkigal and was killed there, hung on a hook like a piece of meat, dead for 3 days, before Enki sent the small creatures made from the dirt under his fingernails to retrieve her with the food and water of life. The story that the later scribes preserved began with a messenger. His name is not given. He is remembered only by his function, the way rivers are named for what they do rather than what they are. He was the king's mouth. He was the lord of Uruk's voice extended beyond the city's walls. Enmerkar had composed his message to the lord of Aratta himself, standing in the hall of the Inanna before Inanna's golden statue, speaking the words aloud in the presence of the goddess. The messenger memorized it. He went over it again and again in the small room where he prepared himself, whispering it to the walls, testing his memory the way a builder tests new brick, pressing, checking for cracks. He walked north. He arrived in Aratta thinner and wearier than he had left. He delivered the message. He stood before the Lord of Aratta in the high mountain court and spoke from memory. And the words came. They had been trained too thoroughly to fail, but they came with a quality of strain, of effort, of a man emptying himself to fulfill a function. He memorized the response. He walked south. Enmerkar heard it. He composed another message, longer than the first, more insistent. And the messenger looked at the Lord of Uruk with the eyes of a man who has been carrying kingdoms inside his skull for months. He did not speak his objection, but Enmerkar saw it. Before Enmerkar pressed the first signs into the first tablet, he went to the Inanna, and he sat in the antechamber of Inanna's inner sanctum, and he thought about Enki. It was Enki who had divided the languages, or perhaps it was Enki who had unified them. There had been a time, the song said, when the whole world spoke a single tongue, when Enlil and all the peoples of the land could address each other directly, when no translator stood between a god's will and human understanding. If the language of men had been divided, if the original unity had been shattered into Sumerian and Elamite and Hurrian and the tongue of the mountain people, then no mouth could carry the full truth of a royal message across that multiplicity. But a mark was not a tongue. A mark could be the thing beneath language, the structure under speech, the shape of an idea before it was dressed in the particular sounds of a particular people. He went to the scribes. Enmerkar held the tablet in both hands and looked at it for a long time. It was not beautiful. The signs were functional, compressed, not yet the art that later scribes would make of them, but it was complete. It held the full weight of his argument, his demand, his theological position, his implied threat. It held all of it in an object that weighed perhaps 2 pounds, that could be carried in one hand. He handed it to the messenger. "You do not need to memorize this," he said. "Give it to them and let them read." The messenger looked at him with the face of a man whose entire professional value had just been quietly abolished. The tablet lay in Aratta's court long after the messenger had been dismissed. Men came to look at it as they might look at an omen fallen from the sky. Some saw only marks. Some saw insult hardened into matter. Some saw trade, taxation, memory, law. The wisest saw danger, not because clay was powerful in itself, but because once speech could survive the speaker, kingship could travel farther than a king's body. The Lord of Aratta understood this with the bitterness reserved for those who recognize a change too late. Mountain walls still stood. Smiths still hammered ore. Cedar still scented the upper halls. But something had shifted beneath visible things. The messenger, who once carried kingdoms inside his memory, now slept easily. The clay suffered in his place. The messenger who had walked north with the tablet walked south with nothing, or rather, with the promise that a tablet would follow. He walked south through the foothills and thought about his life. He thought about the decades of training, the long years learning the royal formulas, the genealogies, the hymns, the protocols of distant courts. He arrived in Uruk and gave his report and was dismissed, and he went to the quarter where the messengers lived and sat in the courtyard and drank beer from a clay cup and watched the scribes' school across the way, where boys sat in rows pressing their first tentative marks into practice tablets. The messenger who once carried kingdoms inside his memory now slept easily. The clay suffered in his place. In Uruk, the signs multiplied. At first, they were rough, practical, almost embarrassed by their own usefulness. Tallies of barley, measures of beer, labor gangs assigned to dredge canals, fish counts from temple nets, copper ingots weighed at the gate, offerings for Inanna on feast days. Then came more: names, places, orders, promises, debts, complaints. The city began to remember itself outside the mind. The foreman could no longer steal a week's grain by claiming confusion. A brewer could be held to measure. A caravan master could not deny what had been loaded in spring when he returned in autumn. A priest who promised 2 lambs to the goddess and brought one found the tablet less forgiving than the gods. The gods, in their largeness, sometimes looked away. The tablet never looked away. The scribes prospered. They were not warriors. They did not plough. Their hands were soft compared with canalmen, their shoulders narrow beside brick carriers. Yet men made way for them in the streets because they moved with baskets of damp tablets that now held the city's second soul. Children watched them and began tracing wedges in dust. There is a hymn the priests of Nippur sang before they sang anything else, a hymn so old that even in Enmerkar's time, no one could say when it had first been composed. It began with the world before words, before the separation of heaven and earth. The priests said that in the time before separation, all men spoke the same tongue. Enlil had given them one mouth, one language, and in it the whole of human knowledge could be spoken and received, perfectly, without error or loss. Enmerkar thought about this wound when he looked at his tablets. He thought about it the way a healer thinks about a wound that cannot be made not to have happened, but can perhaps be made to heal around a new kind of scar. A mark was not a tongue. A mark could be the thing beneath language, the structure under speech, the shape of an idea before it was dressed in the particular sounds of a particular people. This was Enki's deep gift, the one that lived on the underside of the curse. Unity of tongue was already passing. Unity of structure was replacing it. That was the deeper tower, not of brick, of systems. The gods watched what was happening in Uruk as gods watch, not with the focused attention of a parent watching a child learn to walk, but with the diffuse awareness of a presence too large to focus, aware of everything without necessarily understanding any particular thing. Enlil watched and was troubled in the way that he was troubled before floods, before the withdrawal of divine favor from a city, before the great terminations. Inanna, by contrast, watched with delight. She had wanted this. She had taken the me that included scribal art precisely because she understood its potential. Enmerkar came to the inner sanctum alone. He had been doing this since his first year of kingship, coming to sit in the presence of the goddess in the dark hours. When he left before dawn, he felt what he always felt after these hours in the inner sanctum, that he had been enlarged by a conversation he could not fully remember, that something had been decided in a register beyond his hearing. He returned to the scribes. The work continued. Before cities could be bound together by signs, men had to be taught to make signs. The Aduba, the tablet house, the school, appeared in Uruk before it appeared anywhere else, because Uruk had need before others had need, and need creates institution the way water creates channel. The Aduba was not pleasant. The school day began before sunrise. The student arrived with his tools. He sat in rows with the other boys on low benches in a long room that was too hot in summer and too cold in winter, and always smelled of damp clay and lamp oil and the particular anxious smell of children being required to do difficult things. They memorized sign lists. They copied word lists. Lists of plants, animals, fish, birds, cities, geographic features, professions, stones, textiles, vessels. They graduated and took their trained hands and their disciplined memories into the institutions that needed them. A new kind of person was being made. Not a warrior, not a farmer, not a priest in the old sense, but something that had not existed before the signs multiplied. Aratta submitted in the practical way proud places always do. No king crawled. No crown was surrendered publicly. Instead, caravans came regularly. Lapis wrapped in felt. Copper bars stacked in pairs. Timber beams smelling of mountain resin. Craftsmen contracted for seasons at a time. In return, grain moved eastward when harvests were good. Children in Aratta grew up seeing tablets. Children in Uruk grew up seeing mountain stone. Rivalry became dependence. Dependence became custom. Custom becomes history, faster than war does. The Lord of Aratta, in his last years, sat in his high court with the mountain wind coming through the cedar doors and looked at the tablets that now lined the walls of his record chamber, hundreds of them in their careful racks. "Can you remember," the Lord of Aratta asked, "what it was like before we read?" "I can remember not knowing how to read," the counselor said. "I cannot remember what it felt like not to need to." "That is how they won," the Lord said. "Not by taking anything, by making us need something we did not have before." But before that story was written, older plains had already lived its shadow. The people of southern Mesopotamia truly did make bricks and burn them hard. They truly raised terraces where no mountain stood. They truly feared scattering, because scattering meant hunger, weakness, forgetting. And they knew something the later story preserved in sacred form. Language is power. When men speak together, walls rise quickly. When tongues divide, plans falter. Yet Uruk had discovered another path. If speech failed, marks could endure. If tongues multiplied, signs could still command. That was the deeper tower, not of brick, of systems. Enmerkar aged. It happened first in private. Stairs climbed slower. Feasts left him tired. The shouting of younger men felt louder than necessary. Yet in public he remained bronze-backed and sharp-eyed, because kingship is partly theatre performed against time. He still judged disputes, still opened canals in season, still presided when new brick courses were laid on sacred platforms, still entered Inanna's shrine alone at night. But he knew what every builder knows. No wall belongs to its maker for long. He had raised not merely structures, but precedents, and those would outlive him. There is a thing that happens to men who have built greatly. They look at what they have made, and they feel, beneath the pride, a vertigo, the sudden awareness of height, of how far there is to fall. In a later age, another lord of Uruk would build walls so great that they became the first thing travelers saw from 3 days' journey. His name was Gilgamesh. He would travel to the ends of the earth seeking immortality and return empty-handed, and stand before his great walls and understand that the walls themselves were his immortality. The walls, and what was written on them. This is what writing was for, in the end. Not administration, though it served administration. Not diplomacy, though it served diplomacy. It was for this, the long refusal of silence. Among those who moved through court in those later years was Lugalbanda. Some said he was kin. Some said chosen by prowess. Some said beloved of Inanna. Legends gather quickly around men who stand near succession. He was younger than Enmerkar by enough years to seem made of another substance. Swift, where the older king was deliberate, fierce where he was calculating, radiant with the dangerous confidence youth mistakes for destiny. He hunted in reed marshes and returned with boars lashed to poles. He raced chariots along dry embankments. He laughed with soldiers and listened to priests. He could sit with scribes long enough to ask what the new signs meant, then spend the afternoon drilling spear lines under the sun. The people noticed. Cities always study the next face before the old one is gone. In the great temples of Uruk, among the many divine figures who received offerings and hymns and the daily maintenance of priestly attention, there was Ninsun, the great wild cow, the mother goddess, she who gave counsel to her son. She sent dreams. This was her particular function among the functions of the divine world, to enter the dreaming minds of kings and heroes and show them, in the compressed symbolic language of sleep, what the waking mind needed to know. In one dream, early in his reign, he stood in a great storeroom full of clay tablets. They filled the room from floor to ceiling, thousands of them, in orderly rows. The room breathed. The tablets were not dead objects. They were alive with what had been pressed into them. Every thought and order and promise and complaint and measurement that had ever been made in the city of Uruk. He woke and lay in the dark and listened to the night sounds of the city, and he thought, this is what I have made. Not walls. The city remembering itself. The city's second soul. One flood season, when river waters came high and brown, Enmerkar summoned Lugalbanda to the upper terrace. Below them, Uruk labored as always, men patching levees, women hauling grain to safer storage, boys driving animals uphill, temple servants covering records with oiled cloth against damp. The city did not pause for dynastic conversation. Enmerkar placed a tablet in Lugalbanda's hands. On it were marks recording canal allotments, barley reserves, names of work crews, tribute due from eastern roads. Lugalbanda turned it over. "I thought kings inherited spears," he said. "They inherit shortages," Enmerkar replied, "and lists. Do you see towers? They sink. Do you see walls? They crack. Do you see men cheering in the square? They cheer whoever feeds them next." Then he tapped the tablet. "This is slower than glory and stronger than memory. Rule this, and the rest may follow." Rain began then, hard and warm, drumming plaster roofs and temple courts alike. They stood in it without moving, 2 generations under one sky. The dead know things the living cannot reach. This is what the Sumerians believed, and they were not careless in their theology. The underworld was ruled by Ereshkigal, Inanna's older sister, the dark mirror of the bright goddess. Where Inanna was desire and war and the morning star, Ereshkigal was the one who had been taken below. Enmerkar knew this story as he knew the shape of his own hands. He had spent enough of his life in the inner sanctum to know that the divine presence was not comfort. It was pressure. It was demand. This was not paralyzing. It was clarifying. A man who knows his time is limited makes different choices than a man who imagines himself permanent. Deep in the Inanna complex, behind the offering halls and the ritual courts and the priests' residences, there was a room that smelled of fresh clay and lamp oil and the particular dusty dryness of old clay that had been fired and shelved. This was the record room. It was not impressive to look at. The walls were plain brick. The shelves were cedar. There were no paintings, no inscriptions on the walls, no divine images. The only ornament was the tablets themselves, thousands of them, in their neat rows. Cities lived on in the record room after they had ceased to live anywhere else. Men lived on in the record room after they had ceased to live anywhere else. The scribe who had made the canal agreement of the 3rd year was dead, but the agreement itself remained, unchanged, saying exactly what it had said when the clay was wet and the reed pressed in. What the priests meant when they said the gods were eternal. Not that the divine beings were made of different stuff than men, but that what they stood for persisted beyond any particular instantiation. What the scribes were doing was making human things persist the way divine things persisted. It was the most audacious thing men had ever attempted. When Enmerkar died, the mourning was real. Not because all loved him, no ruler is granted that miracle, but because he had given form to abundance. The mourning rites lasted 7 days. The priests performed the lamentations. The guild of wailers sang the songs developed over generations to express what a city felt when its king died. He was buried with rites, offerings, lamentations, and the necessary exaggerations. Then administration resumed before sunset. That too was part of his legacy. Lugalbanda Rose. With him came a different energy, less architect, more hero, less patient, more radiant. Songs would later magnify him into wanderer, survivor, chosen one, Such songs often preserve truth sideways. He inherited a city no longer becoming. Uruk had become. Its terraces were known. Its roads connected worlds. Its scribes multiplied memory. Its peoples understood themselves as belonging to something larger than kin or quarter. This was the true throne Enmerkar left behind. Not a seat, a machine of grain, mud, worship, labor, and signs. He spent time with the scribes, not merely asking what the signs meant, as he had done in Enmerkar's time, but going further, understanding the logic of the system. The scribes were surprised. Kings did not usually spend so much time in record rooms. Lugalbanda told them, "The man who can move quickly is only as good as his map." Long afterward, in another age, scribes of another people would write the story of the tower. They would write it as warning, as explanation for the multiplicity of tongues. They would make of it a myth of hubris. But the Sumerians, who had lived the story before it was written, understood it differently. They were not afraid of organization. They had built organization. They had made it their essential technology. The division of tongues was not the punishment that ended the tower building. The division of tongues was the problem that the tower building was meant to solve. The tablet was the answer to Babel, not its sequel. And so the old story closes where many beginnings hide. A messenger once staggered beneath the weight of too many royal words. A king pressed reeds into clay. A mountain city resisted, then adapted. A plain city rose like an argument against flatness. Later, peoples remembered towers and divided tongues. Earlier peoples had already lived the lesson. Men gather. They build upward. They seek names that last. Speech fails them, so they make other vessels. Brick, tablet, temple, law, story. And when one ruler is taken by dust, another climbs the terrace stairs while ovens are lit, canals opened, and scribes wet fresh clay for the day's first mark.